Today, we're going to take a look at the best case scenario for Kamala Harris in the upcoming election. We'll take a look at the best case scenario for Donald Trump in the near future, but today it's just going to be for Harris. And I'm not sure if this is the last time I'm going to do this scenario before the election or if I'm going to be able to fit another one in. But for now, this is the best reasonable case scenario. It's not going to be a massive blue tsunami. There's still more than 6 weeks to go. I think a lot can change. But for now, this is going to assume that a lot of the polls end up panning out. And in many places, Harris is going to match what Biden did. And in some places, even improved by a few points. So we're going to start by filling out the safe states, and these are going to be 10 or more point margins. And the thing I always mention to keep in mind is a lot of these ratings are very, very borderline. So you might be a half a point on just the other side of a different rating. But other than that, we're all going to have some different maps. You're going to have your own reasons for your own ratings, but let's go through mine. So I try to use the polling, I try to consider trends, I consider the candidate specifics and how well they're running their campaigns. But a lot of it is just going to be filling in the blanks and trying to come up with the best guess. So in this best Harris scenario, there's not really anything too controversial. Of course, she gets the West Coast, much of the East Coast, plus Colorado and New Mexico and Illinois in the middle. Now in this, she's also going to get Virginia safe. Biden won it by 10 last time. I'm going to say in this, she's able to match Biden's margin. Also in the Northeast, we're going to do New Hampshire, and we're going to do Maine at large. Now are these way over 10 points? No, not at all. But in this, she's going to do a little bit better than Biden did. We're going to assume Trump does not have success here, and these are just going to cross into double digits. And the last state we're going to give safe to Harris is going to be Minnesota. This one gets just over 10 as well, and it's largely because of her running mate, Tim Walz. I don't think the VP picks really have that much weight, but if she had a great night and Walz bumps her up by another half a point to 1 point, I think this could hit about 10 to 10 and a half, and it's also going to go safe. Now we'll plug in the safe states for Trump, and most of these are pretty much going to be what they usually are. Now there's a couple of very borderline states, and those are going to be Montana and Kansas. Both of those, on a great night for Harris, I think we get down to very low double digits. If Kansas ended up moving a lot to the left, it could get down just under 10. So I can see it, but in this, it's going to be just over 10 points. Missouri is another close one, but that's going to be about 10 and a half to 11. And the other close one is going to be Mississippi. But the one that does fall just under 10 points for me is South Carolina. We'll come back to that in a minute when we do the likely states. Now let's get to the likely states. These are going to be between a 5 and a 10 point margin. For Harris, she's going to get Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. Since redistricting, this did get a little bit redder, but it's largely suburban. The Trump brand is not conducive for success here. Harris would get this at least by mid, probably high single digits. And then we'll give her one more. We'll go into the former blue wall and go right in the middle and give her Michigan. Of the 3 Rust Belt states, I tend to think this one would be the bluest. In this, it gets to about 5.25 points. So it's not at all close to safe, but I think there's just enough there to put it at likely. Now the likely states for Trump, he's going to get Alaska. With ranked choice voting and the Trump brand, I don't think being the best fit in this state, we'll say it gets down under 10, but it's still definitely going to be over 5 points and go likely. Then the other likely state is going to be South Carolina. You might be thinking this is a red state. How could this get under 10? Well, Obama got it under 10 in 2008. It was over 10 in 2012. And in 2020, Trump won it by under 12 points. So that's not exactly an overwhelmingly red state. In this, we're going to assume that Harris energizes a lot of black voters in the South. That's going to give her a bit of a bounce, and she's going to get it just under 10. I think about 9 points would be her ceiling. So that's enough for this to get down just into likely territory. Now we'll do the more competitive lean states. These are going to be more than 1 point, but less than 5. For Harris, she's going to get Nevada and Arizona. A lot of people seem to think Nevada is trending toward the right, but Biden still won it by 2.5 in 2020. And this, we're going to say she's able to match Biden's margin and maybe move it even 1 or 2 points to the left. So that's easily going to keep this in lean D territory. Arizona is another state that has moved toward the left. And this, we're going to say those trends continue. She's going to start to get it by 2, 3, maybe even 4 points. So it's also going to go leans. Then we'll go back into the Rust Belt and do Wisconsin. This, I tend to think, would be the reddest of the 3 notable states in this region. I know in the current polling, it looks like Harris is doing better in this state than the others. It's highly up for debate, but in this, I think it's going to get to be about 4.5, close to 5, but it's still going to stay a lean margin. And then Pennsylvania is going to be very similar. Close to 5, but it's going to go leans. Then we'll go down to North Carolina. Close call in 2020. In this, we're going to say Harris does a little bit better. That's going to cause the state to flip. And if she does have a good night, I think it could get over a point in her favor, maybe even up to 2 points. So for that reason, it's going to go leans. And finally, we've got Georgia, another state that has moved toward the left. In this, it's an easy call. It's going to go lean blue. Now we've got the lean states for Trump. We're going to start in the Northeast and go to Maine's 2nd congressional district. This is the kind of district that has moved toward Trump and should be favorable for him, even in a best case scenario for Harris. It's tough to predict the margin, but we'll say that in this, it does get down under 5, but still stays more than 1, and it's going to go leads for Trump. Then we've got 4 states left. Then let's do Iowa and Ohio. These are states that I still think would go relatively comfortable for Trump even in this scenario. But again, it's a best case scenario for Harris. I think these margins would get down to somewhere between 4 and 5 points. It's a big improvement for her to get it down to lean territory. I don't think they're going to be close to flipping, but Trump is still going to hang on by lean margins. Then we've got Texas and Florida. Both of these also going leans for Trump. This is going to assume the Texas trends continue toward the left. Even if Trump makes gains in South Texas, we're going to say the suburbs still continue to get bluer. That's going to get this closer, down to about 1.5 points. It's not enough to flip it. It's just not enough for a tilt rating. I think we'd have to start seeing Harris leading in multiple polls for the state to become truly competitive. So for now, Trump is still going to get it by a lean rating. And finally, his home state of Florida. This is one polling showed competitive in 16 and in 20. Even though the red wave did hit this state in 2022, I don't think it's going to be anything like that in this election. And I think in this type of scenario, I again also think she would come up short by 1 to 2 points. It'd still be a good showing and an improvement over Biden, but Trump would still hold the state with a lean rating. And that's actually it. There are no tilt ratings in this scenario. So we've got Kamala Harris at 319, Donald Trump at 219. It's a 100 gap margin in the Electoral College and a pretty solid win for Harris. Again, this is going to assume that a lot of the favorable polling pans out for Harris. She's at least able to match what Biden was able to do in 2020 with a lot of improvements. And this assumes a lot of the trends continue in her favor, and Donald Trump just doesn't really have a ton of success. Given all the polarization out there, I think Trump is still going to win a ton of these states, as we could see. Again, Montana, Kansas, Mississippi, maybe even Missouri would get a lot closer to getting down to a likely rating. But I'm going to say they just hold their double-digit ratings. Texas and Florida, I think, would be the closest to flipping, but I think it's just too much of a stretch, even in this scenario. But again, this is just the best reasonable case. This is not some sort of a massive tsunami. And this is also just as of mid-September. I'm not sure if I'm going to update this again, but if I do at the end, there could be some more changes. So you might disagree on some of these. Some of you might even say that Maine at large or New Hampshire, there's no way those are going to get over 10 even in this scenario. Others might say Wisconsin, Nevada, or Arizona, those would get over 5 points. Maybe even Alaska could get under 5. I get it, there's a bunch of different possibilities out there. Everybody's going to have their own take, but this is what I've got as the best case scenario for Kamala Harris. So let me know in the comments, how does your map look as of mid-September? Do you have a completely different take in some of these states, or are you pretty close to the map that I've got? Let me know down below, and again, we'll be taking a look at the same scenario for Donald Trump in the near future. But on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.